शांतिः।
Happy Holi, everyone. So we will do a little different start to the class today and going forward till the end of April. You may have seen that we had sent a request from Mayaji. Mayaji is in Bangalore and she's the one who has started our Parivar to the extent that it is today. And she guides the parivar on a lot of things where it makes sense. So her latest missive has been that we should all do Hanuman Chalisa. Now it needs to be done by us individually, just once a day, as she has recommended, for next 40 days. So you can start whenever and then count till 40 days from whichever day you start. Okay. So just as a Lok Sangra, we will do one chant of Hanuman Chalisa before the start of every class after invocation shlokas. Okay, so you can all pull out Hanuman Chalisa. I've shared the English Hindi version as well with the meanings in the WhatsApp group a while back. So I would take this opportunity today to start the chant. And
did you forward that message?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll chant here, but you can all chant with me with at your end as well. So let's do this together. Okay. Shri Guru Charan Saroj Raj Nij Manu Mukur Sudhar Varnau Raghubir Bimal Jasu Jodayako Phalchar बुद्धिहीन तनु जान के सुमिरो पवन कुमार बल बुद्धि विद्या देहु मोहि हरहु क्लेश विकार जय हनुमान ज्ञान गुण सागर जय कपीस तिनु लोक उजागर रामदूत अतुलित बल धामा अंजनी पुत्र पवन सुत नामा महावीर विक्रम बजरंगी कुमति निवार सुमति के संगी कंचन वरण विराज सुबेसा कानन कुंडल कुंचित केसा हाथ ब्रज और ध्वजा बिराजे कांधे मूज जनेऊ साजे शंकर सुवन केसरी नंदन तेज प्रताप महाजगवंदन विद्यावान गुणी अति चातुर राम काज करिबे को आतुर प्रभु चरित्र सुनबे को रसिया राम लखन सीता मन बसिया सूक्ष्म रूप धरि सिंह ही दिखावा विकट रूप धरि लंका जरावा भीम रूप धरि असुर सहारे रामचंद्र के काज सवारे लाए संजीवन लखन जियाए श्री रघुबीर हर्षि उर लाए रघुपति कीन्ही बहुत बड़ाई तुम मम प्रिय भरती समभाई सहस बदन तुम रोजस गावे अस कहि श्रीपति कंठ लगावे सनकादिक ब्रह्मादि मुनीसा नारद सारद सहित अहिसा जम कुबेर दिगपाल जहाँ थे कवि कोविद कहि सके कहाँ थे तुम उपकार सुग्रीव कीन्हा राम मिलाए राजपत दीन्हा तुमरो मंत्र विभीषण माना लंकेश्वर भय सब जग जाना जुग सहस्त्र जो जन पर भानु लील्यता ही मधुर फल जानू प्रभु मुद्रिका मेली मुख माहि जलधि लांघि गए अचरज नाही दुर्गम काज जगत के जेते सुगम अनुग्रह तुम्हरे तेते राम दुआरे तुम रखवारे होत न आज्ञा बिनु पसारे सब सुख लहै तुम्हारी सरना तुम रक्षक काहू को डरना आपन तेज समहरो आपे तीनों लोक हांकते कापे महावीर भूत पिशाच निकट नहीं आवे, महावीर जब नाम सुनावे, नासे रोग हरे सब पीरा, जपत निरंतर हनुमत बीरा, संकट ते हनुमान छुड़ावे, मन कन वचन ध्यान जो लावे, सब पर राम तपस्वी राजा, तिनके काज सकल तुम साजा, और मनोरथ जो कोई लावे, सोई अमित जीवन फल पावे, चारों जुग परताप तुम्हारा, है प्रसिद्ध जगत उजियारा, साधु संत के तुम रखवारे, असुर निकंदन राम दुलारे, अष्ट सिद्धि नौ निधि के दाता, असबर दीन जानकी माता, राम रसायन तुमरे पासा, सदा रहो रघुपति के दासा, तुमरे भजन राम को पावे, जन्म जन्म के दुख बिसरावे, अंत काल रघुपर पुर जाई, जहाँ जन्म हरि भक्त कहाई, और देवता चित न धरई, हनुमत से सर्व सुख करई, संकट कटे मिटे सब पीरा, जो सुमरे हनुमत बल बीरा, जय 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 हनुमान गोसाई, कृपा करो गुरुदेव के नाई, जो शत बार पाठ कर कोई, छूट ही बंदी महा सुख होई, जो ये पढ़े हनुमान चालीसा, होय सिद्धि साखी गौरी सा, तुलसीदास सदा हरि चेरा, कीजे नाथ हृदय मह डेरा, कीजे नाथ हृदय मह डेरा, पवन तनय संकट हरन मंगल मूर्ति रूप, राम लखन सीता सहेत, हृदय बसहु सुरभूप। So from next week onwards, I mean, most of us would probably be comfortable reciting Hanuman Chalisa. So in whatever format, in whatever music, whatever tune you want to sing it, we'll invite everyone. If whoever wants to participate, there's no compulsion. It's a voluntary activity. So we'll start a roster. So if anyone's interested, please take that. We'll put it on the roster. No, everyone can then put it based on their requirement. Okay. So we'll do it that way.
I think last time we finished with Shloka 55, and last time we'd given a very big backdrop before the class, but this time it's just to bring everything together. Arjun basically asked a question after hearing all about Karma Yogi, Sankhya Yogi. He was more curious that how does it be? How does it, a person who's constantly in equanimous and in a state of equanimity and who's even minded, how does that person behave? How does he walk? How does he talk? How do I even recognize him so that I can start practicing that? So the next few shlokas that we will read up to shloka 63, 60 or so, basically Bhagwanji talks about the goal. Like this is our goal. Before he talks more specifics about what it means to be a karma yogi, he's basically defining the goalpost for all of us.
How will we know how far along the way we have come? So these are journey markers for us to know for our own self-assessment.
Yeah. So we'll start with reading shloka 56.
And for that, so what has he asked? He has basically asked, if someone has reached this level of equanimity, then how do I know that? How does such a person behave in this world? How does he think? How does he speak? And how is his mind? What is the state of his mind? Okay. And in answer to that, Bhagwanji had told him what are the first level of characteristics of such a person, and there were two main characteristics. The first characteristic is that he has given up all desires for worldly things. So it's not giving up a desire because the nature abhors vacuum. But the person has replaced his desire for worldly activities, worldly possessions with a larger desire of Bhagwan Ji ki prapti, of self-realization. Okay, that's one. And second is he is content in his own self. Now we will take it on from there. So because these are the two basic characteristics which will then define how he behaves, how he thinks, and what he does in the world.
Radul, would you like to read with us?
Yes.
Okay. So if you can start with the connection, which is right above Shloka 56.
Yeah. Connection. These two features, absence of desires and self-containment, form the basis for other characteristics described in the succeeding shlokas. Now the Lord points out the thoughts which fashion the attitudes of a person of firm perception.
Yeah.
I'm still singing the Hanuman Chalisa tune, so that's going to come out in this one also.
That is true.
I'm struggling to come out of that. Dukheshvanu dvigna manaha.
Dukheshvanu digna magnaha.
Sukheshu vigatspraha.
Sukheshu vigatispraha.
Veet rag bhaya krodha.
Veet rag bhaya krodha.
Sthit dhir muni ruchyate.
Sthit dhir muni niruchyate.
Sthit dhir muni ruchyate.
Sthit dhir muni ruchyate.
Please read.
Read.
Yeah. A sage of steady, firm wisdom is one whose mind is unperturbed in adversity and who does not hanker after prosperity. Also, such a person is totally free from attachment, fear, and anger. The attitude of a person with steady, firm perception. The first feature of the attitude of such a person's mind is that experience of adversity does not cause any disturbance in the mind, nor does the experience of prosperity cause any elation.
So out here, it's just to bring it very clear, right? The attitude of a person with steady, firm perception. Firm perception here is the understanding of what is real and not real. It's the firm perception is ki as long as we're in this world and we have this body and we're engaging with the sansar, all of that is unreal. Firm perception is I'm very firm that my real self is the unchangeable, is the unmutable, is the never changing, right? So when a person operates from that firm perception, then all of a sudden anything that ebbs and flows in this world becomes that much easier to observe and enjoy rather than go along with it and behe jana uske saath, right? So I just wanted to clarify the meaning of firm perception here. Please continue.
Moreover, the pleasures of prosperity fail to create any hankering in the mind. Hankering is an attitude of mind when it strongly desires to possess something from which there is an expectation of pleasure. The second feature is that freedom from the sense of attachment, fear, and anger makes such a person of steady wisdom distinguished.
Yeah. So here, the first piece that we talked about, right? The first aspect is that this person doesn't have any hankering. Now, what does hankering really mean? Now, when I first read it, the image that came in my mind, like what does hankering really do is that it agitates you a lot, right? You're unable to really focus on anything else except that one thing that your mind is constantly, keeping you agitated about. The image that came in my head, which always stays, is Dar, the movie Dar, in which this guy Shah Rukh Khan had a hankering for the leading lady of the movie, right, Juhi Chawla, and all his entire life he's unable to stay still, he's unable to enjoy anything, and all he wants is that one thing. He doesn't even know why he wants it, right? After beyond a point, it becomes unreasonable. All you are doing, all your activities in your life get geared towards that. Now, it was shown in an extreme manner in that movie, but that's literally how we become for all other aspects of life when our world becomes hankering for that. Whether it is, marks in an exam. Why do you need those marks in the first place? Like, we forget that, right? Or that next promotion, and sometimes people can go to great lengths to get that. or your next job or whatever it is, right? Whatever creates that hankering, that job or that next house or that next car, that we start to forget the purpose why we did those in the first place, and they become an end in themselves. That's what happens when you're hankering, and it creates so much agitation that you're unable to think straight. And it's a place of great hell, as we've seen, and it doesn't end very well, as seen in the movie as well, right? So it's a great thing to always ask yourself, if you're agitated, then what is it that you're hankering after?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Continue.
And then the second piece is Rag Bhay Krodh, right? The second line that we talk about. Veet Rag Bhay Krodh. Rag, attachment, Bhay, fear, and Krodh, anger. These are the biggest enemies that we have, that we need to fight against. And anyone who has, the person who has reached the equanimity of intellect, he has gone past Rag, Bhay, and Krodh. He has gone past attachment. Attachment is where, what do we feel attached towards? Anything for which we have an expectation of pleasure. Our attachments are when we want the same thing to occur again and again. We want to meet the same person because they make us feel good. We want to spend time with that person. We want a certain activity to be done because it gives us senses of pleasure. We like to eat something, or we like to go somewhere, experience something. All of these are attachments. Attachment is we wanting to relive that experience again and again. It's not enough to just live that experience once and say, okay, it was good, happy. But after that, there's I want to repeat that experience. I don't want to let it go. And that is where attachment kicks in. Then there is bhay, fear. Fear of anything that you don't like. You don't want that experience to occur. You don't want to see that person. You don't want to feel those sensations again. So you want to avoid it at all costs. And that is the fear. Then comes the krodh, anger. Anger is an offshoot which happens when an expectation that you have from something or someone doesn't get fulfilled. Whenever your expectations are not fulfilled, or something gets in the way as a hurdle towards your attainment of those goals or those expectations, is when anger kicks in. So yeah. So
and all of this stems from desire.
Yeah.
So you have a desire to either feel complete, because earning that extra money will make you feel satisfied. So you're hankering for it. You don't get it, you get angry. You get it, then you get attached to it.
And there is greed.
And there's greed that comes in, right? And all of it will subtly always stem from a very quiet but powerful desire inside of us, which has either come from this life or our past lives or the way we are shaped. And that abhav, that emptiness, we are trying to fill with the material world.
Yeah.
So whenever you're feeling this hankering or attachment or any of these things, always step back and say, what is this desire that I'm trying to chase? What is this expectation that I have? And do I really need to fill it with the outside world, or can I work on myself inside?
Yeah. Each of these 5 things that have been mentioned in this shlok, right? Happiness, unhappiness, fear, attachment, and anger. They all arise, like he said, from our past actions, our sanskars, and our prarabdha, either accumulated in this life or in the past life. And the only way to, we do have a will, a purusharth. So when they come, the first important thing is that a person of equanimity doesn't even feel attachment or fear from these also. To understand that I am getting angry right now as my response to a certain situation, to be able to observe that also and say, okay, I'm feeling this, it is my old sanskar. Now, what should I do right now? I use my purusharth, my free will, to rise above my sanskar, to rise above the prarabdha that has got me in this situation that is causing my sanskar to rise up. And use that, and when every time we do that, then these sanskars slowly fade away. But not feel fear of that. Don't get angry at yourself for feeling angry at someone else, because that will also happen. It's a very vicious and a very subtle process,
Yeah.
right? On both positives and the negative side. You start to feel angry about, oh, why did I feel angry? Then you are getting into another spiral altogether, right? So it's okay. I got angry. That is my sanskar. Let it go. Let it go, right? You're feeling attached to something or you're fearful of something. Now you're fearful of the fear itself. Why am I feeling that fear? So being kind to ourselves is very, very important, and just constantly being aware and say, it's okay. This will also go. Every time it comes up and I observe it and I let it go is one moment closer, one step closer to reducing the impact that sanskar has on you. That habit is getting weakened every single time you're able to observe it and let it go. So, so that and
Yeah,
that's where
I
it will reach
have a
when.
question. See, it's very easy to see now, at least for me, that hankering is coming because of a strong desire or an attachment or your expectation. Now it's a very crystal clear that, I'm a creator of my own, situation. But then, वहां तक तो पहुंच गए, but आगे, how do you get rid of it? I mean, knowing is rather has become like also one, it's I can see, okay, very clearly, but मुझे उसके आगे जाना नहीं आ रहा है अभी कि मैं उससे कैसे निकलूं. How do I get rid of the desire? I've seen my hankering, I've seen my attachment is causing or whatever we know, but then show me a path ahead. How do I get rid of it?
We have actually covered it in a high level before this in this chapter itself, which talks about how do you move past this? You move past this by doing our actions in this world with a yagya bhav. So do an action. How do we do it? First of all, we start with a tyag buddhi. Tyag buddhi of what do we tyag? What do we give up? We give up our sense of ego. So I'm not the doer. I am doing this with the energy given to me by the Lord. The moment you do that, you're giving up any sense of pride or any ego that I am the doer here, I am causing something to happen in this world. No, you're not. God has put you in a situation, grateful that He has given me an opportunity to do this seva, whether it is a seva in office, whether it's a seva at home, whether it's a seva in the community. He has given this opportunity to you. He has chosen you as His medium to express something in this world. Being grateful for that and saying that, Bhagwanji, I am doing this with the energy given to me by you. The special qualities you may have that make you particularly suited to do that activity is a vibhuti. It's a gift given to you by Lord. You haven't done anything to actually reach there. It has been given to you by Lord. Your intelligence or your skill, it is given to us by Him. And then we do it with His energy for His pleasure only, not for what I want to get out of that situation. So we do it by His energy for His pleasure alone. With the results that come from it, we give it to Him as we give it to Him as a prasad. Like you offer flowers to a deity in a puja. So you make all work worship in that manner. And then whatever results come, we take it with prasad buddhi. Thank you very much that you've given. Whether it led you to whatever favorable outcome you wanted it to lead to, or whether it doesn't, whatever comes, I will be satisfied because I have done it for Him and His pleasure only. So that is the way to move past, one way to move past. And we will get into much more detail.
And what is expectation when expectations arise? So what's the path to give up on your expectations? Subtle, it is like a suddenly ray of expectation comes up. That I feel is a big, but खुद को भी नहीं पता होता लेकिन वो प्रकट हो जाती है. तो उसको कैसे आप मतलब deal करो? So like just he said that when you have an expectation, you have to ask yourself whether I need to fulfill from outside or can I go deep inside and, find a way that, is it really that important? Other than that, do you have any?
So let me go a little more in detail here, right? So what happens when you feel a desire or when a desire is fulfilled? Physiologically, what happens is we feel a lot of tingling sensations in our body, which chemical that makes us feel really good. Then we want to chase more of that because it makes us feel good. It's the sensations that we chase. We're not chasing that object. That object is making us feel those sensations, and those sensations feel good, which is basically in a gross sense animal behavior. An animal constantly chase an object because it feels it, that object makes uh, uh, the animal feel good.
When you possess it.
When you're chasing, yeah, when you possess it, that's why you're chasing it, right?
Yeah.
Chasing it because you want that final pleasure of sensations.
Or getting rid of a certain fear.
And these are experiments done with animals all the time, right? They associate a particular sound with food, and you play that sound, and immediately they feel so happy because they know they're going to get food. But if they don't give them food, they'll get really agitated and angry when that sound is played, because the expectation is ki khana milega, and they didn't get food, and they get very irritated, they get very angry. This is I forget the name of the experiment. So the same thing with us. When you have a desire, the question to ask, or an expectation, the question to ask is, to what purpose is it? Is it just to make myself feel good? Or is this an act for the greater good, Lok Sangra?
Or is it for a certain fear? Is it like out of a fear?
Yeah, is it sensation, body sensational that's making you chase it? Or is it a larger purpose? So you can eat a jalebi because it tastes good, but it's also a larger purpose that I need to nourish my body with sugars and everything else. So there's no harm in doing it. But if you have diabetes and you eat jalebi, then that's a bodily conscious decision. There's no purpose there, right? So in every desire, that 4 levels we talk about, purpose, bhav, action, object, always anchor back to where we are in that hierarchy. Purpose mein hai, so what is the purpose? What is the bhav with which I'm doing it? And then if it's, once you think at that level, automatically the expectation of the sensations reduce. So the sansar and the whatever we have to experience is a byproduct of our duty of living our purpose rather than the things to chase.
So I guess one of the things to do is also that, see, nature abhors vacuum. So it isn't as if like, if you're sitting down to meditate, it isn't as if like the mind has to go empty. It will not go empty per se, right? So it isn't as if like the expectations become zero or the desires become zero. That will never happen, right? We are designed to have desires because they impel us forward. So you are not supposed to take these desires away. You take these worldly desires away, then what? Something has to replace it. And that something is that your desire has to become that of self-realization. Expectation from yourself will be of a different kind and different quality. So instead of chasing, the next worldly possession, you start to chase higher goal of self-realization. You will still chase. This machinery is built that way. You just have to redirect it to a different goal. So it isn't like, oh, I just get rid of this. You cannot get rid of it. We are not designed to get rid of it completely, right? The only way is you replace it slowly. You replace it with a higher goal. There is no place for vacuum. Yeah. And when you start to do this, and how do you do it? Like, how do you make sure that your goal is always to the higher level? It won't happen automatically. You have to do it one step at a time. And that's why we have Swadhyay. Very important. These are reminders for ourselves. Reading 2 shlokas a day, doing Swadhyay every day is a very good reminder for ourselves that what our bigger goal is. Then, learning shlokas, or, making sure that we do our Nidhi Dhyasan every day. So when we do that, then slowly we will keep on, and you will start to experience moments where you will be able to actually apply actively the principles we learn, and you will experience a greater pleasure, a greater bliss, a greater happiness than what you have otherwise experienced. And once you experience that, that first taste is like, oh, that was so much better than what I thought is possible. And then you will start hankering for that. So hankering for that highest bliss, hankering for self-realization is a good hankering to have. Desire for self-realization is a good desire to have.
Yeah. And we've also talked about this previously, right? We always want happiness and we're chasing happiness because our natural state is that of Sat, Chit, and Anand, happiness. So everything related to happiness, people achieving happiness, uh, relate very deeply to us. Poems, art, ab sab dekh lo. Because that's our natural state. And that natural state is self, capital S-E ka self. And the word self-realization, which is a goal, is essentially also the path. Just realize the self.
Which is when you will have that Satchit Anand.
All we're doing in this life is we're chasing truth. And that's the ultimate truth. The capital S self. And the goal is just that. On a daily basis, can we realize a little bit of the capital S self around us and within us? Once that becomes 24 hours, first self-realization is done. Then you're in moksha. It's not something that is far out there. It's just turning that machinery we have to try and look for the capital S self. And these are the principles that allow us to not discover, but allow us to see it within ourselves by implementing it.
So it's something you have to do and take your own experience, I guess.
It's all experiential, absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing that we will be able to say. It's like if you've never eaten apple before, then no one can make you experience an apple. We can give you features or like characteristics, like whatever we are reading here, right? It's like saying an apple is round, it is red, it is crunchy, it is sweet, but you'll never know until you experience it. This is what we are doing right now. We are just describing what an apple looks and feels like. But when you really eat it, is when you will know, oh, this is an apple. And the only way you will eat an apple is by actually, doing swadhyay, doing nidhi dhyasan, and trying to implement it in your daily life and making the small changes. Every time you implement it, you will get closer, and your habit of implementing it will then get strengthened, and other worldly habits will slowly start to recede away.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Mridul, continue.
Attachment is the attitude of the mind which makes it relish the recurrence of contact with any person, incident, or circumstance. Fear is the attitude of mind which makes it dislike such a recurrence. Anger is the attitude which arises when there is hindrance in the process of fulfillment of expectation. A person of study wisdom is free from all these three attitudes. Another question now emerges, namely, how can a person keep the intellect equipoised in the presence of some cause of happiness or unhappiness, or that of attachment, fear, or anger?
This is Rita's question right here. Right, Rita, this is what you asked.
This question may arise in the mind of anyone as an everyday problem, and Arjuna, through whom these questions have been raised, is worthy of our gratitude. In fact, happiness or unhappiness, the rise of attachment, fear, or anger are the results of one's own actions done earlier in this life or in previous lives. All the desire-oriented actions performed with expectations of their results give rise to these attitudes. As soon as any of these attitudes appear, they can immediately be ascribed to one's own previous actions. By constant practice, these attitudes gradually fade away. Only the doer is responsible for the outcome of actions, and it would be futile to blame anyone else for them.
Yeah, and that's fairly clear. We've talked about this. Rita, would you like to? Sorry, Rashi here. Rashi, if you can read the connection.
The Lord further describes other characteristics of the mental attitude of such a realized person.
Yah sarvatranabhisneha.
या सर्वत्राणि या सर्वत्राणि
Abhisneha.
अभिस्नेह
Tatat prapya shubhashubham.
तत्प्राप्त शुभाशुभं
Nabhinandanti nadveshti.
नाभिनन्दन्ति नादेष्टि
Tasya pradnya pratishtita.
तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता
Pradnya, not gya. Pradnya.
प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. A person steadfast in firm perception, neither welcome nor abhor whatever good or bad occur, being completely unattached to anything. The mental attitude of a person with firm perception. In this shloka, the Lord has given an indication of mental attitude which are applicable in respect of all the circumstances, incident, and person encountered in daily life. Attachment is based on expectation of pleasure and circumstances, incident, and person. And this expectation of pleasure is the cause of all frustration. In Srimad Bhagavata, it is said that expectation is the supreme cause of unhappiness and its absence in the supreme cause of all happiness.
You can underline this sentence. So here
And-
there are two, there is one word here that is important to note. In the first line, Sarvatran Abhisneha. Abhisneha. What is Abhisneha? Abhisneha is when you identify with something, like when you like something or you have an attachment to something to such an extent that you identify with it, your identity gets attached to it. It may be a certain role, it may be a certain thing, and when there is such a high attachment to that identity, then it causes asakti. Asakti is basically what creates all the other issues around it, right? So it could be a role, it could be a relationship. Like people have an attachment sometimes to their professional identity, becomes super important for them. Or they may have an attachment to a certain way of being, like I am a mother, I'm a mom, and then everything around me is the role that I play as a mom. It becomes so important that, sometimes it can be to the detriment of the child. Or it can be, when I'm so attached to a professional identity, then everything else takes a backseat for that. So that word is very important, that we develop abhisne, we develop that level of attachment that our identity starts to, depend on it, which means that it's so difficult to let it go, because letting it go means death, essentially, for us.
Yeah. And when expectation seeps in, you can almost, there are two things that will immediately happen. One, you're no longer grateful for what is happening because you expect it. But if it doesn't happen, anger will seep in. And that's why expectation sometimes is the root cause for marriages to fall apart. Because a person, and they're just like, you're no longer the person you were the first 6 months we got married. First 6 months you were grateful for everything I did because I did it with the right bhav and you appreciated it. Today I still make that morning cup of tea, but if that cup of tea I put salt instead of sugar, bus, gone.
The first 6 months also you put salt in it, it will be gone.
No, but, I mean, I'm sure they get the example. But it's small things like that, right? Like if on a daily basis we just expect the other person to do it, that it's very hard for us then to be grateful for it.
That's where we say, we start taking other people for granted. This is where it is. Like we start taking people for granted because there is an expectation that they will do this all the time, and then there is no gratefulness. So if we feel frustrated, if we feel angry, if we are feeling upset, if we are feeling disappointed, if you have any of these feelings, it's a great checkpoint to step back and ask ourselves, what was my expectation here? That's the great checkpoint. Any point of time, if you're feeling any of these negative emotions.
Yeah. And it's also amazing, right? We've read so many books like Anne Frank, who is that little girl in Netherlands, the Jewish girl during World War II, who was a 9-year-old girl, and she wrote her own diary, right? And we make every kid in the world, we make them read Anne Frank's diary. That she had so much love and gratefulness even in that state where she was hiding, otherwise she eventually did die by the hands of the Nazis, that it appeals to all of us that that's who we can be. But on a daily basis, because we built so much structure and our chase of our hankering for achievement, कि now this is base level, we need to have a functional family के लिए ये करना है, नहीं करेंगे then we won't be able to do a job, we won't be able to get the next promotion. अरे why did you not take care of the kids this morning? I had a call. Like all of that creates so much stress instead of working with it with a bhav of the right purpose, but with the right bhav of gratefulness and the right bhav of yagya bhav. Okay, theek hai. A kid came in the middle of a call and made masti or asked my attention. theek hai. That was Bhagwanji's way of getting my attention for something.
Or Bhagwanji's way of getting my attention to the fact that how quickly will I get upset about this? Will I get upset or not? Can I deal with it? Right? So everything that happens when we start looking at it from a perspective that it is happening for my good alone, then there is no place for upset. There is no place for upset. Then you're always happy. Whatever may happen, it may cause a little bit of discomfort. It's like pain hoga, but suffering nahi hogi. Right? You've cut the cord between pain and suffering. Physical and mental attitudes are completely different. We can read.
Whenever unhappiness rises in the mind, it would be found to stem from some expectation. This expectation may be related either to some person or to something, a desire for a claim or even for a word of thanks. Non-fulfillment of such expectations causes intense pain. Consequently, there is a revolting feeling and an immediate impulses to
Apportion
blame for it. But if any act is done only in performance of duty without any sense of self gratification or expectation, the questions of disappointment, frustration, or consequent pain would never arise.
So this is a very natural defense mechanism, right? Like whenever things don't go our way, most of us tend to immediately blame. We blame our family members, we blame our boss, we blame our team members, we blame the client. And that's a very natural response because instead of internalizing that, boss, the problem is we had that expectation, it's easier to externalize and continue to blame the sansar for what you did not get. But that's also a big red flag for us, that every time you are getting into a blame or a complaining mode, you have to treat it as a warning bell to step back and say, I need to work internally what's going on here, right? There is this poem, it's one of my favorite poems actually. It's called If by Rudyard Kipling, right? So I will send the link to the poem, it's incredible. But there is this Wimbledon, right? So on the center court in Wimbledon, the Grand Slam, tennis Grand Slam, the players walk out, and before they walk out to the court, they stand there, their name gets announced, and then they walk out to the court. The place where they stand, there is a line of that poem written on top, engraved. And that line is, if you can meet triumph and disaster and treat
those two imposters just the same,
then the world is yours.
And everything that's in it. And which is more, you're a man, my son.
Right? And I've noticed whenever these art forms carry for 50, 60, 70 years, it's because they talk to the capital as self inside of us. It talks to a very deep sense of our goal or our purpose. And that's exactly what this shloka is also saying, is if we can treat triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters. Look at the choice of words. They're all both imposters. The triumph is also an imposter. The disaster is also an imposter. It's all Maya. And if we can treat them the same, then the whole world is ours.
And which is more, you will be a man, my son. That's when you become a man. Otherwise, you haven't realized your divinity, then that is not the purpose of man, right? Till then, we are an animal. In fact, you're worse than an animal, because an animal does not have the free will. They are just doing what they need to. We have the free will and we don't use it. Then we are worse than animals. Vijay, will you read the connection?
Start with the connection.
Yeah.
In foregoing slokas, the Lord described the thoughts and attitude of a person established in form perception. Now he describes how such a person is established or fixed in the frame of mind. The mental posture is in answer to the words how such person is seated, he says.
Yada sanharate chayam.
Yada samharata te chayam.
Kurmakaniva sarvashah.
Kurmakaniva sarvasaka.
Indriyani indriyarthebhyah.
Indriyani indriya artibhaya. Artibhyah.
Tasya pradnya pratishtita.
Tasya prajna pratishtita.
Just read that, please.
Just as a tortoise withdraws all its limbs as soon as it comes in contact with an external object, similarly, when this one, the sage, withdraws his senses from their objects, then he said to be established in form perception. The stability of mind of a sage with a firm perception. As soon as the tiny limbs of a tortoise come in contact with an external object, it immediately withdraws them within the tough hide of fear of being hurt. In the same manner, the sage with a firm perception withdraws his senses from their objects and remains poised in his equanimity.
So it's fairly self-explanatory, but let me give a very practical, everyday example. When a mosquito bites you, right? What happens? It itches. And what do you feel like doing? Itching it.
Yeah.
What happens when you itch it? Rashi said.
Yeah, more itching and all, right?
So what happens when you itch? Initially, it feels very good because you've satisfied that desire and craving of the itch. But then it gets itchier and itchier. And all of us, I'm sure, have reached a stage where we've itched it so much the blood's come out.
Yeah.
You know? And then it's become a proper wound. Right? That mosquito itch is nothing but an example of the desire that we chase. And what happens? It's a slippery slope. And now that we're adults, and we always tell our kids, stop itching. Chala jayega. It'll go in 2 minutes. And as adults, now we know if you don't itch it, get your mind out of it for like 2-3 minutes, it's gone. You don't even remember it. But if you actually itch it and get irritated, then it's a downward slope.
I'll remind you next time you're itching.
So it's a downward slope, right? And that's exactly what this shloka is saying, is when that sense object is there, don't get deluded in thinking, the best way to satisfy a craving is to have some of it. That's like, again, fire you're putting a lot of ghee, but initially the fire will act as if it's getting doused because of the liquid, but then it will come back with a vengeance. And the same thing with desire, which is why addiction is such a big issue, right?
So it says that, the tortoise withdraws for the fear of being hurt. What does that mean? Is that, when we are out there in VVGP, if there is a case where we think that that VVGP is going to create agitation in us, it is going to take us away from our path of, self-realization, then at this early stage of our learning, we should withdraw from anything that we think will cause agitation. Now, how do we withdraw? At this stage, you can actually choose to withdraw physically from that situation, that person, that VVGP. And eventually you will reach a stage where you can be physically present, but you can mentally withdraw. So what tortoise is doing is a mental withdrawal. But if at this stage of our journey we are not able to, then we can do a physical withdrawal. So as an example, we go for party, right? And now what happens to us after the party is very important. Now, party by itself, it's not good or bad. It is what it is. What we do with that party is very important. You go there to meet people and you have a satsang, you come back feeling happy, everyone is happy that we had a great time, and you're in a sadbhav mode. It's a great party, right? It's a satsang for you. But if you come out of it with a full gossipy session, oh, look what that person was wearing, what did that person serve, what was the food like, what was the drink like, and then you're in that gossipy mood, then this party is not a satsang for you at all. Okay, if you go to a party where people are gossipy and all they are doing is, gossip sessions, and even if you don't want it, you are getting embroiled in it, and when you are in that group, all you're doing is gossip, then it is not good for you. It is taking you away from your divinity. In that sense, now there's nothing wrong with those people, there's nothing wrong with that party. It's just that our ability at this stage is such that we are not able to keep ourselves away, our tortoise limbs, from that. We do not remain unaffected. We are not in a state where I can sit there, let people gossip and not let it affect me. I get drawn into it. Then I have a choice of withdrawing myself physically, strengthen my swadhyay, strengthen my sadhana, and then reach a point where I can be with the same set of people and it will not affect me. I will not be a part of the gossip. I have the ability to steer the conversation away from that gossip or where I don't want it to go, and steer it to a place where I want it to go, and create a satsang where it may be kusang for everyone else, but it becomes a satsang for me. Very, very important. At no point of time should we take away from our divinity. Anything that takes us away from our divinity, look to withdraw physically and then eventually mentally. And this is not a stricture on those people or that situation or that event. It's a stricture on us, that I am not that strong in my sadhana right now, and so I am getting swayed. External VVGP is not the cause. It is me who's the cause. My sanskars are such that I get excited, agitated to do something that takes me away from my path of divinity. So this is important to know. And then the connection, how this will be important. Kavita, will you read?
What does this withdrawal of sense contacts from their object mean? Is it only a physical removal of senses, or is it an attitude of mind? The Lord says.
Vishaya.
Very audible,
Sorry?
Sorry, not very audible. You may want to come closer, Kavita.
Oh.
Vishaya vinivartante.
Vishaya vinivartante.
Niharasya dehinaha. Niraharasya dehinaha. Sorry.
Niraharasya dehinaha.
Rasvarjam rasoapyasya.
Rasavarjam rasopyasya.
Param drishtva nivartate.
Param drishtva nivartate.
Please read.
The objects of the senses may appear to be untouched by the senses of a person who keeps them, that is the senses, starved forcibly of contact. but a craving for them may persist. But even the cravings of a sage are annihilated when he has a perception of the Supreme.
So this is extremely important for us to know, but also like this is the end goal, but we will also talk about how we get to that end goal. So as an example, I'll give an example of fasting. When we are observing a fast, a physical fast of food, withdrawal from food of any kind, whether it is a type of food or a complete withdrawal of fast, right? How do we do that? There is, you are keeping your sense away from the object of those senses, right? Now, this is called fasting. But in our world, it is called fasting. But now, how do people approach that fast is very important. You have seen people being upset in that moment of fast, because their mind and their sense is craving food. And there are others who will stay completely equanimous and happy, and they will continue with their life just as if it is nothing, right? And in fact, some of them will go even a step higher and use that act of fasting to increase their sadhana of something else, right? Now, there are three different attitudes with which you are approaching the same action. So, action and padarth, right? What is being said here is that if your mind is hankering after something, the moment a thought has come into your mind that I want to eat food, I want to eat food, your fast has broken at that stage. It doesn't matter whether you are eating or not eating. So what you need to close out is that thought. And we will get there. Now, it is not to say that today you will start fasting and you will eventually, suddenly you will get there. No, it's okay. You will, but the point is that you have to be aware that where is my thought going? And how do I change my thought over to something else so that I achieve that state of complete, like my mind has to withdraw. And a sage reaches that. Now, how does he reach that? I'll give you another example to understand this. A child likes toy cars. We've talked about this before, right? A child likes toy cars and his desire for those toys continues. He'll grow up, he wants a bigger toy. Now his toy car at a bigger stage will be a bigger car, a real car which he can drive. When he has that bigger toy car to experience, his desire for that small toy car completely vanishes. He has no desire for it left anymore. And that is what we need to do. Our desire will go from what pleasures we experience in fasting, from eating food, to a higher level of desire for the peace, the bliss that comes from when you have when your body and your senses are not engaged in digesting that food. You have extra energy left, and if you can drive that energy towards meditation or for contemplation of any kind, you will experience higher levels of concentration for achieving some other goal, which will give you a higher level of bliss. Then, whatever discomfort comes from fasting or being away from abstinence from food will disappear. You will stop hankering for that food because there is something else, something higher for you to hanker after.
So I think the last two shlokas, right? The tortoise limb shloka and this shloka, it makes it very clear that sense objects are experienced at two levels in the body. One is at the sense object level, but the subtler is the mind level. And the tortoise example was shut down the sense object, right? So that you don't get swayed by the likes and dislikes and the pleasures. But the subtler here is the mind. That if the mind still has that craving, even if you shut down the sense object, it's only a matter of time before that slippery slope will come in.
Yes.
And you will fall back down. So shutting down the senses is not enough.
Mm.
It has to be at the second and the higher level, which is the mind level, the thought level. Because eventually that is what drives all the senses.
Yes. And in chapter 3, there is a shloka we will read when we come to chapter 3, where they say that a person who is only doing that at a physical level, like for example, this fasting, you're fasting at a physical level, Mentally, you're hankering after all those pleasures, right? Oh my God, like look at the aloo paratha, look at the chaat, look at the samosa. I want to eat this. I want to eat this sweet, right? If you're going through that mind, and so one is being aware of it. Yeah, when you start on your journey, you will start that way. Eventually, you have to get to a place where you don't hanker after food at all. You can go through a feast, you can go to a party, look at everyone eating and not have the slightest this thing that I want to eat too. That is a stage you will reach. But the middle ground is when you are doing this, when you're going from one point A to point B, how are you being? Are you being a person who's like, I am a person on a journey, I am a seeker here, versus another person who says, look at me, I'm fasting, right? And I make it sound like, oh my gosh, like you've achieved, you've arrived. That person is it's a well recognized syndrome, and in Gita you will they call it an imposter. There is a full shlok dedicated to that syndrome. So we'll come to that as well in chapter 3.
The annihilation of longing in a sage with firm perception. If the senses are kept forcibly starved of their object, it might be possible to keep the two away from contact. But a longing for the objects may still subsist on account of the expectation of sense pleasures. If this longing is allowed to persist, a strong desire may arise at any time to experience the pleasures. But the absence of a sage is of a totally different type. By the perception of the Supreme, the mind of the sage experiences the sublimity of bliss, which makes it totally indifferent to the petty pleasures of the senses. For example, a child may be extremely attached to a toy car, so much so that he would hold it in his grip even while sleeping. But when the child grows up into the affluent young man and comes to own big cars, he loses interest in toy cars. In the same manner, not only the external contact of a sage with sense objects annihilated, even the slightest trace of a longing for pleasure also fades away due to perception of the Supreme. This perception keeps the mind saturated with infinite bliss, and therefore the sense pleasures of the world cease to have any meaning for it.
Yeah, I think we've covered this.
So Rita, will you read?
Yeah, 1 second. Yes, yeah.
The connection.
The Lord raises a finger of caution here, pausing to warn against the danger of even a trace of longing subsisting in the sense pleasures.
Yatato hyapi kaunteya.
Yatoto
Hyapi.
hyati kauntetya.
Yeah. Purushasya vipaschitaha.
Purushastya vipastityaha.
Indriyani pramathini.
Indriyani pramathini.
Haranti prasabham manaha.
Hariyanti prasabham bhanyam mataha.
Manaha.
Mantaha. Okay. Yeah. O Kartanya, the turbulent senses forcibly snatch away the mind even of a discerning person enduring to control them. The force of delusion of sense pleasures. The senses have a churning effect. The churning rod positioning in a pot of milk, keeping on rotating constantly when the power is on. Similarly, however discerning a man may be, and howsoever formidable may this effect be to control the senses, the latter might succeed in agitating his mind if even the slightest longing subsists in the mind for the sense objects.
So this is the nature of the sansar, that it is so glamorous and it is so inviting that you have to be really careful what direction you choose, because it can be a slippery slope. And this is, I think, something that the people who suffer with addiction, right? Alcohol and drug abuse and that type of addiction.
Or coffee addiction.
So the people with the severe type of addiction, what do they have to do? If you know the 12 steps, they follow 12 steps in Alcohol Anonymous. The reason why it's one of the most successful ways to like get people off addiction, there are 12 steps. Very first step is surrender to whatever faith you have. But they say you have to surrender, that you cannot control everything. The second step is you have to attend Alcohol Anonymous every week, because that is a satsang for them. Just like this is a satsang for us. So we are trying to stay away from the addiction of the sansar. So the first step is surrender, which is mano, कि ये capital S self है. भगवान जी है हमारे अंदर, and there are enough people that have gone down that experience, that infinite bliss. So the first step is surrender. Second, satsang, which is this class every Sunday, because it reinforces this strength that we need to chase, to go after the world. And then, of course, the satsang also serves as a way to make sure that we're constantly keeping this in check, our senses in check. So they don't, if we do even falter, we can come back quickly, right? I've only known one person who's gone through Alcohol Anonymous, and he's been now sober for like 20 years. He used to work in the same company as me, and it's incredible what a transformation he's had, right? I'm sure we've seen stories, we've read stories, but I always heard his story and thought about what transformation we can have if we move away from the objects of the world to the objects of the self, and that bliss that we can have. And in the Gita Parivar, as when God willing everything opens up end of the year, there will be occasions where we can meet other people. We can of course meet, and then we can meet other people from other classes who've been around for like 7-8 years. You will just see the bliss on their face. And we met one such person yesterday, and we were just like, in the last 3 years, she smiles, and it's like a light bulb.
Yeah.
And you're just like, Alpana, what happened? And there was nothing that perturbed her, nothing. She was just in a different state compared to all of us.
The happiness shines through. The sadhana shines through us. You don't have to say anything to anyone. It will shine despite you being quiet. Like the peace on her face, the calmness, the happiness is just something you cannot avoid experiencing in her presence. It's brilliant.
That's why these structures are important. That's why we say Nam Jap, 2 shlokas a day, doing this regularly every Sunday, not just listening to it, but actually participating here, because it makes a huge difference in the energies we're experiencing, the presence with which we are reading as well, right?
And
next one also. Can I read the next one?
Yeah, no, I wanted to bring out one more important thing here. So when they are talking about the force of delusion of sense pleasures, right? They are, the word that Krishna has chosen to use for Arjun here is Kaunteya. Kaunteya is son of Kunti. Kunti, who was the son of Earth. So every time he refers to him as Parth or Kaunteya, he is emphasizing that you are being tied down to the grossest of the elements. The grossest of all the 5 elements is earth, right? So the sense pleasures tie us down to that. And that is why it is extremely important to have control over the sense objects and how they connect with the world. Again, there is nothing wrong with the sense objects or the objects of the world. We have to use them. This Maya is built for our purpose. And now what we're talking about is how we venture out in this world and how we use these objects is what is important. Move from bhog to yog. Move from Maya Jal to Yog Maya. move from bhog buddhi to prasad buddhi and yog buddhi. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, it's very difficult, right? You'll keep coming back. You'll keep coming back. Even the slightest thing will draw you down. And in Bhagavad, we have Srimad Bhagavad, there are examples and stories of a lot of people who are highly acclaimed, highly accomplished in their journey of self-realization. And there is just one thing that was left in them, one last trace, and that brought them down considerably. Which are stories for us to remind ourselves that we have to be very careful of what we are doing, what we are saying. Savdhani is sadhana. When you are paying attention to what you're doing, constantly being conscious of what you're doing, that itself is a sadhana. That's part of our journey. Very important. Savdhani is sadhana. We can read again.
Yeah.
So, Aarti? Aarti, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Tani sarvani samyamya.
Tani sarvani samyamya.
Samyamya.
Sayamya.
Yukta asit matparaha.
Yukta asita matparaha.
Vashehi yasya indrani.
Vyashehi yasya indrani.
Tasya pradnya pratishtita.
Tasya prajna pratishtita.
Please read.
Having disciplined the senses in this manner, the sage is devoted steadfastly to me. For one with senses under strict control is a sage with firm perception. In this shloka, the Lord points out that a sage of firm perception does not permit any license to the senses. On the other hand, keeping them under strict control, the sage rests undisturbed, meditating on the tranquility of the Supreme. This is what the Lord calls being seated in reply to Arjuna's question in shloka 54. Obviously, the physical posture of sitting is symbolic of this response in supreme tranquility.
So you've just covered this, right? That we have to have strict control over our senses. We should not permit any license to the senses to go awry. And that is very important because even the smallest of the times when we are not savdhan, when we are not careful, it is going to lead us down very quickly on the slippery slope. We'll go ahead. Naina, would you like to read with us? Or Anita? Oh, Naina's here. Okay, perfect.
You're on mute.
The connection. Now a question arises about the chain of events leading to the attraction of the senses towards their objects. Explaining this, the Lord says,
Dhyayato vishayan punsaha.
Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha.
Sangaste shupajayate.
Sangaste upajayate.
Sangat sanjayate kamaha.
Sangat sanjayate kamaha.
Kamat krodho vijayate.
Kamat krodho vijayate.
Krodhat bhavati sammoha.
Krodhat bhavati sammoha.
Sammohat smriti vibhram.
Sammohat smriti vibhram maha.
Smriti bhranshad buddhinasho.
Smriti bhramshad buddhinasho.
Buddhinashat pranashyati.
Buddhinashat pranashyati.
So now this shloka will talk about that slippery slope.
Yeah.
What that slippery slope is, how do you identify it, and what will always happen. This is the consequence of you chasing your desire.
All right. When a person's thoughts dwell on the objects of sense pleasures, it leads to longing for them. Longing leads to desire, and desire leads to anger. Anger leads to delusion. Delusion makes the retentive power of the mind unsteady, which in turn causes loss of understanding. Loss of understanding leads to self-destruction.
So I think Tumina's example earlier was actually quite apt about the movie Dar and Shah Rukh Khan, right? If you think about there are 30 boys in a class and there are 30 girls in a class in an Indian classroom, but one guy likes a particular girl, the other 29 guys don't like that particular girl. What has changed? What was different between that one and the 29? The difference was one guy had a thought that I want to be with that person, right? And then that thought directed that person's action completely. The other 29 feel no such emotions, feelings, or decision making towards that girl because they haven't had that thought of desire or longing towards that object. That one guy thought about it, and in Shah Rukh Khan's example, that longing led to so much anger, he no longer could decipher between good and bad. Forget for others, he could not even decipher what is good and bad for himself. Right? He had a complete loss of understanding, and in the end of the movie, he dies. All because of that one thought that I want to get that desire. Right? And that's what this shlok basically says is if you chase desires, the end result is always going to be self-destruction.
Yeah. So, and where does it start from? It starts from you thinking about it. So thoughts are very important. What do you spend time on thinking will then cause a longing for that. A longing, and difference between longing and desire is that longing is still at a mental level where you're thinking about it and you're like, I want this. When longing becomes a desire, then you have converted that mental thought into an action to achieve that desire. So mental thoughts getting converted into actions leading to the accumulation of whatever you are longing for becomes then longing changes to desire. And if something doesn't get, if you are not able to get it, then that desire leads to anger. Anger leads to delusion. Delusion meaning then, like he said, you are not able to figure out what is right, what is wrong. You're not able to decipher the real from the unreal. And you can start chasing very unreal things. It will start to create stories in your head around other people. You will start creating stories about, oh, this person said this to me. That means they must be thinking about this. This person is saying something else to me. And what they are saying has got nothing to do with what you're thinking, the stories you're creating in your head about people, situations, events in your life. And that is what is the delusion that you create. You start living outside of reality in your own world, which you are creating for yourself. And that delusion reduces the retentive power of a mind, which and what does that mean? That you're unable to go back to your memories, the memories that tell you what is the right thing to do, what have the scriptures told you, what does the society tell you about the right thing to do, what have your teachers, your parents, your lineage has told you about the right thing to do. Your memory is unable to think about that, is unable to access that memory. And when there is no memory of what is the right, what is the wrong thing to do, then there is no understanding and you are completely mired in that delusion. There is no way out of that delusion, which will eventually lead to self-destruction. This is the slippery slope to hell, starting from desires, starting from thoughts. If you keep where do you spend your time on? Are you spending your time browsing Shopee and Lazada? Then all you will think about is, I want to buy this, I want to buy this. If you're spending your time roaming around in malls, when you have free time, you will think about acquiring all the glamorous things that you see in the mall, right? So where you spend your time is very important, and what you're thinking about.
Larry?
Yeah.
Consequences of thinking of sense objects. Constantly thinking of sense objects leads to a feeling of pleasure in securing them. This feeling of pleasure feeds the embers of a constantly burning desire to possess them. Any impediment in the fulfillment of such a desire causes anger. This anger impairs the sense of propriety, thus resulting in a form of delusion. Such a deluded man even forgets what is good or proper for him, and it makes him blind to the consequences of his anger. Thereafter, the ability to recall one's duty is adversely affected, and all human values are thrown to the winds. Such a man loses the ability of determining what is good for him and what is not. This loss of understanding impels him to act into acts of cruelty, cowardice, and violence, vindictiveness, crime, and violation of all established human values. These acts lead him to tortures of hell, as his successive births land him in lowly forms of creation. Thus, a person born in human form, strongly poised for sublimation to divinity, falls headlong into tortures of hell, doomed to perdition for millions of years. And all this for a moment's misguided thought. What could be more pitiable?
You know, the other example that we've read so many times in newspapers in India growing up is property. How families have broken and fallen apart just for the thought of getting a little bit more money or house or property or whatever. And I'm sure all of us have grown up with stories around, or our parents have told us कि हमारे जाने के बाद don't fight with your brother on property and stuff like that, right? So and it makes you realize that's exactly the life they're living that is being described here. But what is the quality of that life, and what are they leading towards, right? And that's what we're being warned against. Anyways, let's end a few minutes early because we'd like to do birthday wishes for Mradul, whose birthday was last week. Rashi, if you can get some rice. Yeah, just get some rice. So it was also Naresh's birthday, I believe, today, but he hasn't joined, and I will text him later to see.
We'll do birthday wishes for him next class.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I've sent the birthday wishes on the chat group again. We'll read through this.
Mic's on. Okay.
So we'll go through the birthday blessings. So on behalf of everyone, Rashi, please.
When the song starts,
just
bless him with the rice. Keep it in a separate katori, and then make his favorite rice dish and feed it to him. And because it's his birthday, Rashi, you can allow him some sugar, okay?
I always allow you.
Just by the way,
Yeah.
favorite rice dish.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey Mradul.
Hey Mradul.
Tvam. Yashasvi. Tejasvi. Ojasvi. Chiranjeevi. Kirtiman. Buddhiman. Shraddhavan. Bhaktiman. Satviki Buddhi. Satviki Dhriti. Satviki Bhav. Nishkam Karma Yogi Bhava. Janmadinam idam. E priya sakhe. Janmadam idam. E priya sakhe. Shantanu tute sarvada mudam. Shantanu tute sarvada mudam. Prarthayamahe bhavashatayushi. Prarthayamahe bhavashatayushi. Ishvara sada tvam cha rakshasu. Ishvara sada tvam cha rakshasu. Punya karmana kirti marjaya. Punya karmana
कीर्तिमर्जया जीवनं तवा भवतु सार्थकम् जीवनं तवा भवतु सार्थकम् सागर में एक लहर उठी तेरे नाम की सागर में एक लहर उठी तेरे नाम की तुझे मुबारक खुशियाँ आत्मज्ञान की तुझको है आनंद में जाकर मिल जाना तुझको है आनंद में जाकर मिल जाना तू है सुंदर फूल इस संसार की तुम हो सुंदर फूल इस संसार की हैप्पी बर्थडे टू यू हरे कृष्णा टू यू हरे कृष्णा टू यू हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा टू यू may Radha Rani bless you may Radha Rani bless you Hare Krishna to you.
Thank you everyone for your blessings.
Happy birthday, Mridul. Happy birthday.
Radha Rani was blessing you anyway, all through.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, everyone. Narayan, Narayan. Have a lovely weekend and the week ahead.
So
Thank
much.
you, Leena. Thank you so much.
We didn't do conclusion slogas.
Oh yeah, concluding.
Thank you. Delusion. Thank you for the reminder. Wow.
Actually, we typically do birthday song after the conclusion shlokas.
Yeah.
So mess up again. So thank you for reminding Kavita. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukh Bhag Bhavet Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Wonderful. Now we can wish you a happy Sunday and a week ahead. Narayan.
Thank you.
Thank you for a wonderful session.
Thank you.